Hey everyone, welcome back. You're watching Anime Octopus, the place where imagination meets the world of anime. Today, we dive deeper into a powerful fanfiction scenario. What if Naruko inherited Madara Uchiha's power? Part 2. In the previous part, we explored the beginning of this alternate journey. Now, the stakes rise, the power grows, and the story takes a darker, more intense turn. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. This content is created purely for entertainment and discussion purposes. I do not own any anime footage used, all rights belong to their respective creators and copyright holders. Now, without wasting any time, let's continue the story. Orphanage of Konoha, 4 years later. Lunchtime. The children of the orphanage cheered as they ran out of the playroom, hurrying toward the cafeteria. Lunch was one of the happiest parts of the day, and afterward they would all go outside to play. Laughter filled the halls as they went along, except for one child who stayed behind for a moment, standing quietly near the back of the room. Her name was Naruko Uzumaki. Naruko had once been a bright, giggling little girl who found joy in the smallest things: a patch of sunlight on the floor, the sound of wind through the trees, the shape of clouds drifting overhead. But over the years, life at the orphanage had become difficult for her. The adults often overlooked her, and the other children didn't always include her in their games. It left her feeling alone, even in a crowded room. Still, Naruko held on to something very special: her determination to stay kind and hopeful. Carefully glancing around, she slipped her small bag over her shoulders before stepping into the hallway. Inside the bag were her most treasured belongings: a worn toothbrush, a little plush fox she had rescued, and a few scraps of paper she practiced reading on. She kept them close, not because they were valuable to anyone else, but because they meant everything to her. Naruko walked quietly into the cafeteria and picked up a tray. While others were served by the staff, she had learned to serve herself. It wasn't something she complained about; instead, she treated it like a small challenge she could handle on her own. She noticed a bit of extra food still left in a pot and smiled softly, thinking it might be a lucky day. But before she could reach for it, she paused. The lunch helper gently shook her head, guiding her instead toward the usual meal. "That's all right," Naruko said softly to herself, choosing a simple serving of rice. She carried her tray to a small table by the side and ate quietly, humming a cheerful tune under her breath. Even if her meal was small, she made it feel special by imagining it was part of a grand feast in a castle. After finishing, she stood and carefully carried her tray back. On her way, she stumbled slightly when someone rushed past her, and the tray slipped from her hands with a clatter. A few children giggled, but Naruko quickly picked it up and gave a small laugh of her own. "Whoops," she said lightly, brushing herself off. "I'll try again next time." Later that afternoon, Naruko sat beneath a shady tree in the yard, her bag resting beside her. Nearby, children played games together, their voices rising with excitement. Naruko watched them for a moment, then smiled and turned her attention to something else. From her bag, she carefully pulled out a scroll she had found and began to study it. The symbols were tricky, but she was learning, little by little. Where others had lessons, Naruko had her own quiet practice. She traced the characters with her finger, whispering the sounds to herself. "I can do this," she said, her eyes shining with determination. And in truth, she could. Naruko had a special way of seeing the world. She noticed patterns others missed, remembered shapes and sounds, and found meaning in things that seemed confusing at first. Every day, she grew a little stronger, a little wiser. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves above her, and Naruko looked up at the sky. The clouds drifted lazily, forming shapes that made her smile. One day, she whispered, hugging her plush fox close, "I'll have a place where I belong. And when I do, I'll make sure no one ever feels left out." With that thought warming her heart, Naruko returned to her scroll, quietly building a future full of kindness, courage, and bright possibilities. The next day, evening. Naruko sat quietly outside, leaning against her favorite tree with her backpack beside her. She held her dinner carefully, eating slowly as the evening breeze brushed past her cheeks. This was her special place, far enough from the orphanage that no one bothered her, yet still within the tall walls that surrounded it. Konoha was a beautiful village, at least from what Naruko had seen. The sky was soft and golden as the sun began to set, and the air felt calm and kind. She often wondered what the rest of the village looked like beyond those walls. The only time she had ever seen more was the day she had left the hospital, walking back with wide, curious eyes. She picked up a small bite of rice with her chopsticks, pausing before eating it. If she ate slowly, maybe the meal would last longer. Maybe she wouldn't feel so hungry. Her day had been the same as always. A few children had laughed at her, but she ignored them. She studied on her own, ran laps to stay strong, and kept her thoughts to herself. It wasn't exciting, but she held on to a quiet hope that one day things would change. When children in the orphanage turned 8, they were allowed to join the academy, a place where they could learn to become ninjas. Naruko had overheard stories about ninjas traveling beyond the village, helping others, and exploring the world. From that moment on, she had made a promise to herself. She would become a ninja. Even if it meant studying alone. Even if it was difficult. She would learn, grow stronger, and one day step beyond those walls. Hey! Naruko's head snapped up. She instinctively tensed, expecting teasing or trouble. She had hoped no one would discover her quiet place. But instead, she saw a girl about her age standing nearby. The girl had long dark brown hair and wore a neat dress. Her expression wasn't cruel or mocking. It was curious. Are you going to say something, or just stare? The girl asked. Naruko blinked, surprised. She shrugged and looked back down at her food, unsure of what to say. The last time she had tried speaking to this girl, she had gotten into trouble. The adults had made it clear, someone like Naruko wasn't supposed to talk to someone like her. Well, you're not very interesting, the girl said, crossing her arms. Naruko looked up, a flicker of annoyance in her eyes. She forced a small, polite smile. I'm sorry I don't know any tricks, she replied. You should probably go. People might think I did something strange just by talking to you. The girl frowned, then glanced around to make sure no one else was watching. But that's why I came here, she said. Naruko tilted her head. Everyone says you're scary, the girl continued. They tell stories at night about things you've done. Naruko sat up straighter, startled. What? That's not true. I haven't done anything like that. Well, maybe one time I threw a tomato at a teacher. But that was just once. The girl suddenly smiled and clapped her hands softly. See? I knew it didn't make sense. You're just a kid like me. Naruko leaned back against the tree, thinking. Was that really why people avoided her? Because of stories? Stories that weren't even true? She looked at the girl again, still unsure. So, you don't think I'm scary? Naruko asked. The girl shook her head brightly. Naruko crossed her arms. That's easy for you to say. You're treated like a princess. Of course you'd believe whatever people tell you. The girl's expression changed. That's not fair, she said, standing up straighter. Just because people are nice to me doesn't mean I don't think for myself. Naruko stood up too. Well, I have to learn everything on my own. No one helps me. You wouldn't understand. The girl placed her hands on her hips. And you don't understand me either. Naruko frowned. You started it. No, you did. You did. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. Back and forth they went, their voices rising, neither willing to give up. Then, suddenly, both of them stopped. The quiet evening settled around them again. A soft breeze rustled the leaves above. The girl let out a small sigh. This is silly, she said. Naruko hesitated. Then nodded. Yeah. It is. They looked at each other for a moment, and then, unexpectedly, both of them smiled. I'm not like everyone else, the girl said more gently this time. Naruko studied her face, searching for any sign of teasing. There was none. Okay, Naruko replied. Maybe I'm not like everyone else either. The girl brightened. Then maybe we can start over. Naruko thought about it. She wasn't used to second chances. I'm Naruko, she said. The girl smiled warmly. Nice to meet you, Naruko. For the first time in a long while, Naruko didn't feel quite so alone under her tree. No, I'm not. And you're still a baka. The girl declared, crossing her arms with a determined huff. Naruto blinked up at her for a moment, then suddenly burst out laughing. Hey! What's so funny? She demanded, though her voice wobbled just a little. Naruto sat up, rubbing the back of her head with a sheepish grin. You are, she said brightly. But not because you're a princess or anything like that. The girl tilted her head. Then why? Naruto pointed at her knee, now neatly covered with a bandage. Because you were really brave. You cried, yeah, but you stayed still and let me fix it. That's not easy. The girl blinked, surprised. No one had ever called her brave before. I was? She asked quietly. Naruto nodded, smiling wide. Yep. And brave people can be anything they want. Even. Not a princess's. That made the girl giggle. That's not even a word. Naruto shrugged. It is now. For a moment, they both just sat there under the tree, the leaves rustling softly above them. The earlier argument seemed far away now, like a cloud that had already drifted past. The girl smoothed out her dress, then looked at Naruto again. You're weird, she said. Naruto grinned proudly. I know. She hesitated, then smiled back. But, you're kind of nice too. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise. No one had ever said that to her before. Her grin softened just a little. Hey, Naruto said suddenly, sitting up straighter. I never told you my name, did I? The girl shook her head. Naruto puffed out her chest proudly. I'm Naruko. And one day, I'm going to be someone really important. The girl blinked again. Naruko? Naruko nodded. Yep. That's me. The girl smiled. I like it. It suits you. Naruko beamed at that, happier than she expected to be. Well, the girl said, standing up carefully and brushing off her dress again, I guess I should go home before anyone notices this mess. Naruko stood too, picking up her scattered things. Yeah. Me too. They both paused, unsure of what to say next. Then the girl gave a small wave. Thanks. For helping me. Naruko scratched her cheek, a little embarrassed. Yeah. Sorry again for pushing you. It's okay, the girl replied. We're even, remember? Naruko grinned. Right. Even. As the girl began to walk away, she turned back one last time. Hey, Naruko. Yeah? Naruko called. The girl smiled brightly. Next time we meet, I won't cry so easily. Naruko laughed, raising her hand in a cheerful wave. And next time, I won't push so hard. With that, they went their separate ways, both a little happier than before. And beneath the shade of that quiet tree, a small friendship had begun, just as gently as a breeze. Naruko wiped her eyes quickly, a little embarrassed that she had started to cry, but her smile only grew brighter. Hinata blinked in surprise at first, then her own face softened into the gentlest smile. Really? Hinata asked, her voice warm and hopeful. Naruko nodded eagerly, her golden hair catching the evening light. Yeah. I've never had a best friend before. But if it's you, then I want to try my very best. Hinata let out a small, happy laugh. Then it settled. We're best friends. For a moment, the two girls simply stood there under their tree, the leaves above them whispering softly in the breeze. It felt like something important had changed, like the world had become just a little bit kinder. Naruko picked up a fallen leaf and twirled it between her fingers. You know, she said thoughtfully, if you're not a princess, then maybe you're something even better. Hinata tilted her head. Better? Yeah. Naruko grinned. Princesses just sit in castles and wait for things to happen. But you? You help people. You share your food. You make others feel less lonely. She placed the leaf gently in Hinata's hand. That sounds way more amazing to me. Hinata looked down at the leaf, her cheeks turning slightly pink. Then, what does that make you? Naruko paused, scratching her cheek. I don't know yet, she admitted honestly. But I'm going to figure it out one day. And when I do, it'll be something big. Something important. Hinata nodded, her eyes shining. I believe you. That simple sentence made Naruko's heart feel light, like she could run forever without getting tired. From that day on, things didn't magically become perfect, but they did become brighter. At mealtimes, Naruko stood beside Hinata, and together they chose their food. The adults, noticing Hinata's presence, hesitated to object. Slowly, Naruko began to enjoy proper meals more often. During lessons, they sat side by side, helping each other learn new things. Hinata was patient and gentle, while Naruko was full of energy and surprising ideas. And under their secret tree, they built a world of their own, one filled with dreams. I'm going to become someone the whole village notices, Naruko declared one afternoon, balancing on a low branch. Hinata smiled up at her. Then I'll be right there, cheering for you. Naruko laughed. And I'll cheer for you too. Whatever you decide to become. The two girls linked their pinky fingers together, sealing their promise. No matter where life would take them, no matter how much they would grow or change, one thing was certain. They would never be alone again. Months later. It had been about 6 months since Naruko had become friends with Hinata, and in that time, their bond had grown stronger than anyone could have imagined. They were always together, like two stars that refused to drift apart in the night sky. Wherever Naruko went, Hinata followed, and wherever Hinata wandered, Naruko was never far behind. Life at the orphanage hadn't changed much for the other children, but for Naruko, things felt a little brighter. Hinata's presence was like a gentle shield. People who once ignored or misunderstood Naruko now kept their distance, unsure of how to act around the quiet but determined girl who stood by her side. On a warm afternoon, the two friends sat on the roof of the orphanage, their favorite secret place. Below them, the laughter and chatter of other children floated upward like a cheerful melody. The sky stretched wide above them, painted in soft shades of blue and gold. Hinata hugged her small plush fox tightly and let out a soft sigh. "I am so tired of this place, Naruko-chan," she said, her voice full of quiet frustration. "They still won't let you practice with kunai, and they won't even give us any scrolls to learn from." Naruko lay back on the roof, folding her arms behind her head as she gazed at the clouds drifting lazily overhead. "It's not a big deal," she replied, her tone calm but thoughtful. "Most kids don't know how to use kunai before joining the academy anyway. And scrolls? Well, we're still learning how to read them properly." Hinata puffed her cheeks slightly, clearly unconvinced. She moved closer and sat beside Naruko, her hair gently swaying in the breeze. Resting her chin on her knees, she looked at her friend with bright, hopeful eyes. "I can't wait until we become ninja together," Hinata said dreamily. "We'll be on the same team, going on missions, helping people, and exploring the world. And we won't have to stay here anymore. We'll have our own homes right next to each other, and we can visit every day and..." Naruko turned her head, her expression soft but a little serious as she gently interrupted. "That does sound nice," she said. "But what if things don't turn out that way? You might get adopted by an important clan, and I might end up somewhere else." Hinata shook her head quickly, reaching out and holding Naruko's arm. "No, that won't happen. I'm sure you'll be adopted too. Maybe we'll even be adopted together." Naruko gave a small, quiet smile, though her eyes showed a hint of doubt. "I don't think it's that simple," she said softly. "People don't always see me the way they see you." Hinata's grip tightened slightly, as if she could hold on to Naruko and never let go. "I don't care what anyone else thinks," she said firmly. "You're my best friend. That's what matters." For a moment, neither of them spoke. They simply lay side by side, watching the clouds drift across the sky. "We can still wish for it," Hinata added gently. Naruko nodded. "Yeah. We can." She reached over and took Hinata's hand, holding it carefully, as though it were something precious. "Let's just make the most of every day we have," she said. "No matter what happens later." Hinata squeezed her hand in return, her eyes shining but her smile steady. "We will." Naruko sat up slightly and grinned, her playful energy returning. "Hey, Hinata-hime, don't look so worried," she teased. "If anyone tries to take you away, they'll have to deal with me first." Hinata let out a soft laugh and leaned gently against Naruko, comforted by her warmth and courage. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the two friends stayed there together, sharing quiet dreams and simple happiness. Whatever the future held, in that moment, they had each other, and that was more than enough. Later that night, the Hokage sighed and gently adjusted his robes as the council members took their seats. The room felt full of thoughts and expectations, like a classroom waiting for a lesson to begin. Though this meeting had been held before, tonight carried a quiet sense that a decision would finally be made. "I see everyone is here," Hiruzen began, his voice calm but firm. "Tonight, we will decide which clan shall adopt Miss Hinata Senju until she is ready to build a future of her own." Soft murmurs filled the room, but they were quickly hushed with a raised hand from the Hokage. "We must remember," he continued, "that Hinata is not simply a name or a legacy. She is a child of our village, and it is our duty to guide her with care, wisdom, and kindness." One by one, the clan heads shared their thoughts. Some spoke of strength, others of tradition, and many of honor. Yet beneath their words, the Hokage listened for something deeper, who would truly nurture Hinata not just as a future leader, but as a young girl finding her place in the world. As the discussion continued, Shikaku of the Nara clan leaned forward slightly, his voice thoughtful. "Perhaps what matters most is not which clan gains the most, but which one gives the most, to her growth, her happiness, and her sense of belonging." His words settled gently over the room, like falling leaves. The Hokage nodded, taking this to heart as he turned to the Hyuga clan leader. Hyashi spoke with grace, describing a home of discipline and guidance, where Hinata could learn and grow with steady support. Then, to everyone's surprise, Fugaku of the Uchiha clan rose and quietly agreed with Hyashi's proposal. His voice held no hesitation, only certainty. The Hyuga clan will provide her with what she needs, he said simply. A quiet stillness followed. It was not the stillness of uncertainty, but of understanding. The Hokage closed his eyes for a brief moment, reflecting on all that had been said. When he opened them again, they were warm with resolve. Then it is decided, he announced. Hinata Senju will be welcomed into the Hyuga clan, where she will be guided until she is ready to shape her own path. The meeting ended not with noise, but with a calm sense of purpose. Far from the council chamber, beneath a sky filled with gentle stars, a young girl named Naruko Uzumaki sat by her window. She had always been full of bright energy and curious dreams, and tonight was no different. She rested her chin on her hands, watching the stars twinkle. I wonder what kind of person Hinata will become, she murmured softly. Naruko believed that everyone had a special light inside them, waiting to shine. She often imagined a future where she could help others find that light, just as she was learning to understand her own. With a small smile, she whispered to the night, I hope she's happy. The stars seemed to shimmer a little brighter, as if carrying her wish gently across the village. The next morning, Naruko's story. Naruko yawned as she sleepily made her way to the cafeteria, her unruly golden hair still tousled from last night's rest. Students filled the large room around her, but no one whispered or teased. Ever since she had become close friends with Hinata, everyone seemed to understand that kindness was the better choice. She picked up a tray and quietly sat at a table in the far corner. The room felt a little dull without company, but she waited patiently instead of starting her meal. Just then, Hinata Senju entered the cafeteria, looking a bit sleepy but holding her favorite plush fox, Kitsune, close to her chest. The moment she spotted Naruko, her face lit up, and she hurried over, leaving her group behind. Good morning, Naruko-chan. Hinata greeted warmly, sitting beside her and placing Kitsune carefully on the table. Did you eat already? Naruko smiled and shook her head, glancing away shyly. No. I wanted to wait for you. Hinata's cheeks turned a soft pink. Naruko always thought of her, and that made her heart feel light and happy. Together, they walked to pick out their breakfast, chatting softly. Once they returned, they ate side by side, enjoying the simple moment. After finishing, they returned their trays and paused, thinking about how to spend their day. So, what should we do next, Hinata-chan? Naruko asked playfully. It was Saturday, a day when the children had more freedom to choose their activities, as long as they stayed within the orphanage grounds. Hinata tapped her chin thoughtfully. How about we go up to the roof and decide there? It's always nice up there. Before she could say anything more, Naruko had already taken her hand and gently pulled her along, full of excitement. The two hurried outside and climbed a nearby tree with sturdy branches that stretched toward the roof. It had taken Hinata a long time to feel brave enough to climb it the first time, but Naruko had always stayed close, promising to keep her safe. Soon, they reached the rooftop and walked to their favorite spot, where they could see beyond the tall walls of the orphanage. The village stretched out in the distance, full of mystery and possibility. This view never gets old, Naruko said, sitting beside Hinata. Hinata nodded dreamily. I can't wait until we're old enough to go out there together. We could visit the academy, play in the parks, and explore every corner of the village. Naruko listened quietly, imagining every adventure Hinata described. But a small thought tugged at her heart, what if they didn't always have this time together? She wanted to make the most of every moment. Suddenly, an idea sparked in her mind. She gently nudged Hinata and pointed toward a tree near the wall. Hinata followed her gaze. What is it, Naruko-chan? It's just a tree. Naruko shook her head, her eyes bright with curiosity. Look closer, see where the branches go. Hinata studied the tree again. The thick branches stretched over the tall wall, reaching toward a rooftop on the other side. Her eyes widened slightly. Naruko leaned closer and whispered, what if? That's our path to see a little more of the world? Hinata hesitated, holding her hands together. But we're supposed to stay inside the walls. Naruko nodded, understanding her worry. We don't have to go far. We could just look around a little and come right back. Only if you feel comfortable. Hinata looked from the tree to the village beyond, then back at Naruko. She could see the excitement in her friend's eyes, but also care and patience. I'm not worried about myself, Hinata said softly. I just don't want you to get in trouble. Naruko smiled gently and held Hinata's hands. I'll be careful. And we'll stick together, like always. Hinata took a deep breath. She trusted Naruko. More importantly, she knew they would look out for each other. After a moment, she nodded with a small but brave smile. Okay. But we stay safe. Naruko's face lit up with joy. Of course. The two friends stood side by side, looking at the tree and the wide world beyond. Whether they explored or simply imagined, one thing was certain: they would face every adventure together, step by step, with courage and kindness guiding the way. A new discovery. The two friends nervously teetered across the thick branch together. Reaching the end, they found themselves perched directly over the great stone gate. Luckily, they were covered from view by the many lush green leaves blossoming from the tree, hiding them like a secret fort. They were both pleasantly shocked when they noticed that the roof of the cottage below them wasn't more than a 3-foot drop. Naruko was the first to drop down to the roof. Her bright yellow pigtails bounced as she landed softly. A moment later, Hinata followed, landing boldly next to her. Both of them were breathing heavily, their hearts racing with the pure excitement of their secret adventure. We actually made it out, Naruko whispered quietly, looking back at the tall fence of the orphanage. From their high vantage point, she could just see the very tip of the familiar chimney. Woohoo! She cheered in a hushed tone, reaching back to grab Hinata's hand. She led her friend carefully to the edge of the roof. To their luck, the journey down to the ground was easy. A large wooden crate sat just a couple of feet below the roofline. They hopped down onto the crate together, and from there, they made a final, joyful leap to the soft grass below. Standing up, they both looked wide-eyed at the path in front of them, which led straight toward the heart of the village. Before them lay an entire world filled with friendly mysteries: hidden garden tunnels, open clover fields, ancient climbing trees, colorful snack shops, and so many new people to meet. They had no time to lose. Let's go, Naruko cried, her eyes sparkling with wonder. The legend of the three friends. In the misty land of the hidden rain, a different kind of story was unfolding. Long ago, three best friends named Yahiko, Konan, and Nagato lived together, dreaming of a world where everyone could play in the sunshine without any worries. On a rainy afternoon, the three friends were practicing their teamwork on a high, grassy hill. Yahiko, the bravest of the group, stood in the center, while Nagato and Konan cheered him on. They were playing a game of Guardian, where they had to protect a special blue ribbon from being captured by the older students who were acting as challengers. Yahiko! You can do it, Nagato shouted, his red hair damp from the mist. Don't let them get the ribbon. Konan added, her voice full of encouragement as she watched from the top of the hill. Yahiko panted heavily, looking back and forth between his two friends. The game was intense, and the challengers were closing in. He felt the weight of leadership on his shoulders. He wanted to make sure his friends felt safe and happy, even during their most difficult practices. Suddenly, the leader of the older students, a tall boy named Hanzo, called out a final challenge. If you want to win the game and prove your team is the best, you have to find a way to reach the finish line before the sun sets. Yahiko was torn with indecision. The path was steep, and he didn't want anyone to trip. But Nagato stepped forward, a look of great intensity and kindness in his eyes. He knew Yahiko needed a boost of confidence. Yahiko! Go for it! Nagato encouraged, placing a supportive hand on his friend's shoulder. You are the one who brings us all together. I believe in you. With your spirit, you can really change things for the better. Inspired by Nagato's faith in him, Yahiko felt a surge of energy. He realized that as long as they stayed together, they could overcome any obstacle. I will protect our dream, Yahiko declared, his voice ringing out over the hills. Suddenly, a flurry of colorful paper gliders, part of the village's traditional festival, began to rain down from the hill. It was a beautiful sight, signaling the start of the evening celebration. Yahiko held up his hand, and using a gentle gust of wind, he guided the gliders so they landed softly around his friends, creating a path of bright colors through the gray mist. How did he do that? Hanzo wondered, watching in amazement as the younger boy turned a difficult challenge into a moment of beauty. Yahiko ran back to Nagato and Konan, pulling them into a big group hug. They had won the game not by being the strongest, but by being the best friends they could be. Not bad, kid. Hanzo complimented, walking down the hill with a smile. I'm surprised you managed to lead your team so well. That spirit of yours. It truly lives up to the legends of the great leaders. Yahiko looked at Konan and Nagato, his heart full of joy. As long as we are together, he said firmly, we can make the whole world as bright as this village. They walked back toward their home, ready to face whatever new adventures the next day would bring, knowing that friendship was the greatest power of all. Konoha, evening. Naruko held Hinata's hand as they made their way back to the alleyway they had discovered earlier. Naruko had a wonderful memory for landmarks, and she guided them back with a confident smile. They had spent the entire day wandering through the vibrant village of Konoha, exploring every corner that a pair of 4.5-year-olds possibly could. Their imagination had turned every street corner into a grand mountain and every bridge into a gateway to a new world. One of the highlights for Naruko was discovering a cozy little place called a ramen bar. Naruko had followed the delicious scent of broth through the streets until they found it. The owner, seeing the two friends and their bright eyes, had smiled kindly and offered them each a warm, steaming bowl for free. Naruko decided right then that it was the best meal she had ever tasted. Hinata's favorite moment was when they climbed to the very top of the village. They had found a long set of stone stairs leading up to a great cliffside where faces were carved into the rock. It took them a long time to reach the top, but when they finally did, they could see everything. The orphanage, the busy markets, and the deep green forests surrounding the walls were all spread out beneath them like a colorful quilt. They stood there in silence, feeling very small but very happy to be seeing the world together. As the golden sun began to dip below the horizon, they made their way back to the orphanage. They kept their hands tightly clasped so they wouldn't lose each other in the evening bustle of the village. "There's the spot," Naruko whispered, pointing toward the large container they used as a stepping stone. At the end of the alley stood the familiar high wall of the orphanage grounds. Helping each other with practice teamwork, they climbed up. Naruko pulled herself up first and then reached down to help Hinata, who was carefully holding her favorite soft fox doll. From there, Naruko jumped toward the top of the wall, pulling herself over with a bit of effort. She then leaned back down, extending a hand to Hinata to pull her up to the safety of the roof. They moved across the rooftops and onto a sturdy tree branch that led back to the academy building. Just as they landed softly on the tiles, a voice called out, "Dinner! Everyone inside for dinner." Naruko and Hinata let out a long breath of relief. They had made it back just in time. As they caught their breath, they looked at each other and began to giggle quietly, proud of their secret adventure. That night, Naruko fell asleep with a heart full of joy. She dreamt of all the wonderful things she and Hinata would see next. Together, they could do anything. The next morning, Naruko woke up with a wide smile. It was Sunday, and she was eager to find Hinata and plan their next imaginary quest. She jumped out of bed, tidied her blankets with a quick tuck, and skipped toward the cafeteria. However, her skipping slowed when she noticed a group of older girls whispering in the hallway. They seemed to be sharing a very important secret. "Did you hear the news?" one girl whispered. "She's actually being adopted today." Naruko felt a sudden chill. She stayed very still, hoping she was misunderstanding what they meant. "I know," another replied. "I guess that means the other one will be all alone now." Naruko's heart gave a painful thump. She didn't wait to hear another word. She ran as fast as her legs would carry her toward the cafeteria, her bright yellow pigtails fluttering behind her. She scanned the room frantically, looking for the gentle, shy face of her best friend. But Hinata's seat was empty. Naruko turned and dashed through the halls toward the girls' dormitories. She ignored the surprised looks from the staff as she reached Hinata's room. She peered inside, but the room was quiet. The bed was perfectly made, and sitting right in the center of the pillow was the little fox doll, Kitsune. Hinata never went anywhere without that doll. Tears began to sting Naruko's eyes. She grabbed the doll and ran toward the front entrance of the orphanage. She could see several adults standing near the heavy wooden doors. They were dressed in long, elegant white robes and were speaking with the head of the orphanage. Naruko stayed close to the wall, trying to hear what was happening. "Are the papers ready?" a man's voice asked. "Yes, everything is in order," the orphanage director replied. Then, Naruko heard a small, trembling voice she knew all too well. I am ready." Naruko couldn't stay hidden anymore. She burst into the hallway, her breath coming in short gasps. Her heart shattered when she saw Hinata standing there, holding the hand of a tall man in white robes. Hinata looked back over her shoulder, her eyes shimmering with tears. "Hinata!" "Wait!" Naruko cried out. The adults turned toward her. The man holding Hinata's hand, a stern individual named Hyashi, looked down at Naruko with a frown. "Who is this?" Hyashi asked coldly. The director moved forward quickly, looking flustered. "Just one of the other children. Please, ignore the interruption." "I don't want any delays," Hyashi said, turning back toward the door. "We have much to do for the clan today." He began to lead Hinata away. Hinata looked back at Naruko, her expression full of sadness. The director grabbed Naruko's arm to keep her from following. "You stay right here," the director whispered sternly. "You've caused enough trouble." Naruko didn't listen. She was focused only on her friend. With a sudden burst of energy, she wiggled free and ran toward Hinata one last time. She reached her just as they were stepping out of the door and pulled her into a brief, tight hug. "I won't forget you," Naruko whispered, quickly pressing the fox doll into Hinata's hand so she would have something to remember her by. Hinata squeezed the doll tightly, fresh tears falling down her cheeks. "I won't forget you either, Naruko." Two staff members gently but firmly pulled Naruko back as the heavy doors began to close. The last thing Naruko saw was Hinata's small, brave smile through the gap in the doorway. Later that day, Naruko sat in her room, quietly packing her small bag. The director had decided that Naruko would also be leaving the orphanage that day to live in her own small apartment in the village. It wasn't the way Naruko had imagined leaving. She had always hoped she and Hinata would find a home together. She folded her few clothes and tucked her pillow under her arm. Even though she felt very sad, she tried to remember the fun they had the day before. The half year she had spent with Hinata had been the happiest time of her life. A few minutes later, the director came to her door. "It's time to go, Naruko." They walked through the quiet halls together. When they reached the front gates, the director opened them to reveal the busy streets of Konoha. Naruko stepped out into the sunlight, feeling the weight of her bag on her shoulder. "Good luck to you," the director said, though his voice was distant as the gates began to creak shut. Right before the gates closed completely, Naruko looked back. For a moment, she imagined she saw a memory of herself and Hinata standing on the roof, waving goodbye to the place they had outgrown. Then, the gates clicked shut. Naruko took a deep breath, adjusted her bag, and looked toward the village. She knew she was starting a new chapter, and no matter where her path led, she would keep the promise she made to her friend. She would never forget. That wraps up today's deep dive. If you enjoyed this exploration of the latest arcs and theories, your support helps the channel grow more than you know. Show your support. Like this video if you found it helpful, share it with your fellow fans, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a breakdown. Thank you for being part of the journey. Regards. Anime Octopus.